A very shy guy goes into a bar and sees a beautiful woman sitting at the bar. After an hour of gathering up his courage, he finally goes over to her and asks, tentatively, would you mind if I chatted with you for a while? To which she responds by yelling at the top of her lungs, "No, I won't sleep with you tonight." Everyone in the bar is now staring at them. Naturally, the guy is hopelessly and completely embarrassed, and he slinks back to his table. After a few minutes, the woman walks over to him and apologizes. She smiles at him and says, "I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. You see, I'm a graduate student in psychology, and I'm studying how people respond to embarrassing situations." To which he responds, at the top of his lungs, "What do you mean, $200? A little old lady was walking down the street, dragging two large plastic garbage bags behind her. One of the bags was ripped, and every once in a while, a 20 pounds fell out onto the sidewalk. Noticing this, a policeman stopped her and said, "Ma'am, there are 20-pound notes falling out of that bag." "Oh, really? Darn it," said the little old lady. "I'd better go back and see if I can find them. Thanks for telling me, officer." "Well, now, not so fast," said the cop. "Where did you get all that money? You didn't steal it, did you?" "Oh, no," said the old lady. "You see, my back garden is right next to a golf course. A lot of golfers come and pee through a knothole in my fence, right into my flower garden. It used to really tick me off. Kills the flowers, you know. Then I thought, why not make the best of it? So now, I stand behind the fence by the knothole, real quiet, with my hedge clippers. Every time some guy sticks his thing through my fence, I'd surprise him, grab hold of it and say, 'Okay, mate, give me 20 pounds or off it comes.'" "Well, that seems only fair," said the cop, laughing. "Okay, good luck. Oh, by the way, what's in the other bag? Not everybody pays." A policeman, an archer, and a soldier are on an airplane losing altitude. The pilot yells to these passengers, "We're carrying too much weight. Drop whatever you got." The policeman drops his pistol, the archer drops his bow and arrow, and the soldier drops a grenade out of the hatch door. The plane still crashes, and all three passengers wake up in different locations. In search for help, they each start making their way through the woods they are now lost in. The policeman stumbles upon a little girl crying over the body of an adult man. He asks the girl, "What happened here?" To which the little girl replies, "I was walking with my daddy and a gun fell out of the sky and hit his head." The archer comes across someone crying over a body as well, a young boy. The archer says, "Oh my gosh, what happened?" The boy tells the archer, "We were playing hide and seek and I found him with an arrow in his head." The soldier pushes through the brush and finds a young boy laughing hysterically, standing in front of a cabin with a giant hole in the wall. The soldier asks the little boy, "Whoa, what did I miss?" The little boy says between laughing fits, "You wouldn't believe the fart I just ripped." A policeman is driving past a roadside apple stand when he notices the sign, "Apple seeds guaranteed to make you smarter, $20 per seed." He pulls over and informs the vendor that it is fraud and false advertising to make absurd claims like this. No, the vendor tells the cop. "My apples are a special variety, a scientific miracle. Buy just one seed, eat it, and you will notice an increase in intelligence. If not, I promise to refund your $20. "All right," says the cop, "but if this doesn't work, I'm shutting your operation down." He hands over a $20 bill, takes the seed, chews it up, and waits for it to kick in. After a few moments, he says, "You know, even if you're not lying, I could have bought a whole bag of your apples and had enough seeds to last me months." "Ah, yes," says the vendor. "It's working already." Late one night, a police officer was patrolling a desolate area popular with young couples doing more than just sitting in the dark. Catching his attention was a couple in a car with the interior light on. Moving closer, the cop could see a young man behind the steering wheel reading a newspaper. In the back seat, a young blonde was knitting. The lawman walked up to the vehicle and knocked on the driver's side window. The startled lad rolled it down and said, "Yes, officer?" "What are you doing?" the cop asked. "Isn't it obvious?" The young man replied, "I'm reading today's newspaper." Pointing to the blonde in the back seat, the policeman grunted. "And what's she doing?" "I believe she's knitting a sweater," the guy behind the wheel responded. "How old are you?" the cop inquired. I'm 22, officer. And the girl, how old is she? The dude in the driver's seat looked at his watch and said, she'll turn 18 in 10 minutes. The day after a man lost his wife in a scuba diving accident, he was greeted by two grim-faced policemen at his door. We're sorry to call on you at this hour, Mr. Wilkins, but we have some information about your wife. Well, tell me, the man said. The policeman said, we have some bad news, some good news, and some really great news. Which do you want to hear first? Fearing the worst, Mr. Wilkins said, give me the bad news first. So the policeman said, I'm sorry to tell you, sir, but this morning we found your wife's body in the bay. Oh, my God, said Mr. Wilkins, overcome by emotion. Then, remembering what the policeman had said, he asked, what's the good news? Well, said the policeman, when we pulled her up, she had 2 5-pound lobsters and a dozen good-sized Dungeness crabs on her. If that's the good news, then what's the great news? Mr. Wilkins demanded. The policeman said, we're going to pull her up again tomorrow morning. The day after a man lost his wife in a scuba diving accident, he was greeted by two grim-faced policemen at his door. We're sorry to call on you at this hour, Mr. Wilkins, but we have some information about your wife. Well, tell me, the man said. The policeman said, we have some bad news, some good news, and some really great news. Which do you want to hear first? Fearing the worst, Mr. Wilkins said, give me the bad news first. So the policeman said, I'm sorry to tell you, sir, but this morning we found your wife's body in the bay. Oh, my God, said Mr. Wilkins, overcome by emotion. Then, remembering what the policeman had said, he asked, what's the good news? Well, said the policeman, when we pulled her up, she had 2 5-pound lobsters and a dozen good-sized Dungeness crabs on her. If that's the good news, then what's the great news? Mr. Wilkins demanded. The policeman said, we're going to pull her up again tomorrow morning. A blonde got caught in a blizzard. It was snowing heavily and blowing to the point that visibility was almost zero when the little blonde got off work. She made her way to her car and wondered how she was going to make it home. She sat in her car while it warmed up and thought about her situation. She finally remembered her dad's advice that if she got caught in a blizzard, she should wait for a snowplow to come by and follow it. That way she would not get stuck in the snowdrift. This made her feel much better, and sure enough, in a little while a snowplow went by, and she started to follow it. As she followed the snowplow, she was feeling very smug as they continued, and she was not having any problem with the blizzard conditions. After quite some time had passed, she was somewhat surprised when the snowplow stopped and the driver got out and came back to her car and signaled for her to roll down her window. The snowplow driver wanted to know if she was all right, as she had been following him for a long time. She said that she was fine and told him of her dad's advice to follow a snowplow when caught in a blizzard. The driver replied that it was okay with him and she could continue following if she wanted, but he was done with the Walmart parking lot and was going over to the Kmart next. Every Sunday, father and son go to the same restaurant. When asking for the bill, the waitress places the bill on the table. They put the right amount on the table, but the son puts a $500 tip. Next Monday, the father goes to the same restaurant, pays, and leaves a $5 tip. The scenario repeats for a couple of months. Some Monday, the waitress, out of curiosity, decided to ask the father, why does your son always leave a $500 tip every Sunday, and you, sir, only leave $5? Not that I'm complaining, but the discrepancy is so big that I start wondering why this happened. The father looks at the waitress and says, well, my child, I would like to tip more, but unfortunately, I don't have a rich dad. One day at a bus stop, there was a girl who was wearing a skin-tight miniskirt. When the bus arrived and it was her turn to get on, she realized that her skirt was so tight that she couldn't get her foot high enough to reach the step. Thinking it would give her enough slack to raise her leg, she reached back and unzipped her skirt a little. She still could not reach the step. Embarrassed, she reached back once again to unzip it a little more. Still, she couldn't reach the step. So, with her skirt zipper halfway down, she reached back and unzipped her skirt all the way. Thinking that she could get on the step now, she lifted up her leg only to realize that she still couldn't reach the step. So, seeing how embarrassed the girl was, the man standing behind her put his hands around her waist and lifted her up onto the first step of the bus. The girl turned around furiously and said, "How dare you touch my body that way? I don't even know you." Shocked, the man says, "Well, ma'am, after you reached around and unzipped my fly 3 times, I kind of figured that we were friends." A kid asked, "Dad, what is the difference between anger and exasperation?" The father replied, "It's mostly a matter of degree. Let me show you what I mean." With that, the father dialed a random number. He said, "Hello, is Adrian here?" The man answered, "There is no one here called Adrian. Why don't you pay attention when dialing?" "He was probably very busy with something, and we annoyed him. Now watch," the father said. The father dialed the number again. "Hello, is Adrian there?" asked the father. "Now look here," came the heated reply. "You just called this number, and I told you that there is no Adrian here. You've got a lot of nerve calling again." The receiver slammed down hard. The father turned to his daughter and said, "You'll see, that was anger. Now I'll show you what exasperation means." He redialed, and when a violent voice roared, "Hello?" The father calmly said, "Hello, this is Adrian. Have there been any phone calls for me?" A lady finds out that she's pregnant, but she is worried. Her husband has anger management issues, yelling a lot and breaking things. He is really horrible to be around. She doesn't want her kids to be like that, so she asks her doctor for advice. Her doctor says, "Rub your belly once a day every day and say, 'Be polite, be polite.'" So she starts doing so. But as the pregnancy goes on, her husband's attitude gets worse. Instead of supporting her, he gets more angry, more often being super rude asked the time and really stressing her out. She starts to rub her belly more and more often. Instead of once a day, it becomes 2 times, 3 times, 10 times, 100 times, till she is almost constantly rubbing and reciting, "Be polite, be polite, be polite." The due date arrives with no sign of the birth. A few days pass, not a contraction to be felt. Weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and no baby is born. Eventually, she dies at the ripe old age of 92. The medical examiner conducting her autopsy cuts open her belly and discovers 2 identical middle-aged men saying, "After you, no, no, after you." A man walks into a bar and orders a drink. The bartender gives the man his drink, and the man asks, "If I show you something crazy, would you let me have free drinks for the rest of the night?" The bartender thinks for a minute and then says, "It would be something spectacular to take that offer." The man leans down and picks up a box and sets it on the bar. He opens the box, and inside is a small piano man who is only 1 foot tall, and beside him, a little piano. The piano man starts playing classical music like Beethoven and Chopin. Once he finishes, the bartender is in utter disbelief. He tells the man, "You can have free drinks for the rest of the night, but only if you tell me where you got this." The man says, "In the alleyway behind your bar, there is a genie who is granting free wishes to everyone who wants them." Elated, the bartender heads behind his bar to see if it was true. A few minutes passed, and out of the alleyway erupted a cacophony of quacking. The bartender rushes back into the bar and shuts his door against a wave of thousands of ducks. He manages to secure the door and says to the man, "I think that the genie is hard of hearing because after I asked for $1,000,000, these ducks appeared by the thousands." The man chuckles and says, "Did you really think I wished for a 12-inch pianist?" An 85-year-old couple is going on a holiday when they suddenly die in a plane crash. They had been married for 60 years and kept in good health due to their healthy diet and regular exercise. When they reached heaven, St. Peter took them to their mansion, decked out with a fully stocked kitchen, master bath suite, and their very own jacuzzi. As his wife oohed and ahed at their new possessions, the old man asked Peter how much all of this was going to cost. "It's all free," Peter replied. "We are in heaven after all." Next, they surveyed the lush championship golf course behind their home, where they were entitled to play every day. Of course, all the old man wanted to know was, "How much are the green fees?" "It's free," came the reply. Next, they went to the clubhouse and saw the lavish buffet on offer. With all of the world's different cuisines on offer, every meal cooked to perfection. "How much do we have to pay for two?" asked the old man. "Don't you understand yet?" Peter replied, exasperated. "It's all free. You're in heaven." "Well, where are the low-fat and cholesterol tables then? The food won't have too many calories, will it?" the old man asked, looking quite worried. "That's the best part of heaven," St. Peter said, excitedly. "You can eat as much of whatever you want, and you won't gain a single gram." With that, the old man went into a fit of anger, throwing down his hat and stomping on it wildly. His wife and Peter tried to calm him down, asking what was wrong. The old man looked at his wife. "This is all your fault," he screamed. "If it weren't for you and your blasted bran muffins, I could have been here 10 years ago." A lawyer boarded an airplane in New Orleans with a box of frozen crabs and asked a blonde flight attendant to take care of them for him. She took the box and promised to put it in the crew's refrigerator. He advised her that he was holding her personally responsible for them staying frozen, mentioning in a very haughty manner that he was a lawyer, and proceeded to rant at her about what would happen if she let them thaw out. Needless to say, she was annoyed by his behavior. Shortly before landing in New York, she used the intercom to announce to the entire cabin, "Would the gentleman who gave me the crabs in New Orleans please raise your hand?" Not one hand went up, so she took them home and ate them. A poor man decides to write a letter to God asking for some money. In the letter, he writes that he works very hard but can never make enough. He pleads to God that even $100 would make him extremely happy. The next day, he goes to the post office, hands in his letter, and leaves with high hopes. The person sorting all the mail notices the envelope addressed to God. Confused, he stamps the letter to be returned to the poor man's house. Later that week, as the mailman comes to the poor man's house to deliver his mail, he also notices the letter addressed to God. The mailman reads the letter and feels bad for the poor man, so he decides to get $50 out of his wallet and put it in the envelope. He puts the envelope in the poor man's mailbox and continues on with his day, feeling great for helping a man in need. The next week, when the mailman reaches the poor man's house again, he notices yet another letter from the poor man to God. He opens the envelope and reads the letter. "Dear God, thank you so much for the money you sent me last week, but you should know that my thieving mailman stole half of what you had sent me." A blonde in her Corvette convertible passes a policeman at high speed. He immediately flips on his lights and gives chase. She careens at a corner and knocks over a mailbox, then jumps the sidewalk, sending pedestrians scrambling for safety. She gets back onto the road and approaches a red light with traffic stopped but swerves into the opposite lane, crossing the double yellow line, passes the stopped traffic, runs the red light, and then takes a hard right turn, just missing a woman crossing with a baby stroller. Then, as she proceeds at a high speed down the next street, she suddenly sees a parking spot and makes a hard turn into it but does not brake fast enough. She plows into the car parked ahead and sets off her airbags. The policeman finally catches up, gets out, and runs to her car as she opens the door, struggling to get out from under the inflated airbags. The policeman shoves them aside and takes her by her arm to get her out when suddenly he realizes she is buck naked from head to toe. Stunned, he asks, "Why are you totally naked?" "Oh, thank God," she replies. "I thought you were going to ask me about my driving." A guy sits down in a movie theater and notices that the man in front of him has brought his dog, and it's sitting in the seat next to him. He thinks it's unusual, but he likes dogs, so he decides that as long as it's not a distraction, he won't mention it. The movie starts, and pretty soon there's a funny part. The dog makes some low, woofing sounds that seem like laughter. In a little while, there's a sad part, and the dog appears to be weeping. This continues throughout the film, and the man sitting behind the dog is astounded. When the lights come up, he taps the dog's owner on the shoulder and tells him, "I gotta say, and I know it sounds weird, but it seemed like your dog really enjoyed this movie." The dog owner looks at the dog and nods. "I know it really is weird," he says, because he absolutely hated the book. Two sisters, one blonde and one brunette, inherit the family ranch. Unfortunately, after just a few years, they are in financial trouble. In order to keep the bank from repossessing the ranch, they need to purchase a bull so that they can breed their own stock. The brunette tells her sister, "When I get there, I'll contact you to drive out after me and haul it home." The brunette arrives at the man's ranch, inspects the bull, and decides she wants to buy it. The man tells her that he will sell it for $599, no less. After paying him, she drives to the nearest town to send her sister a telegram to tell her the news. She walks into the telegraph office and says, "I want to send a telegram to my sister telling her that I've bought a bull for our ranch. I need her to hitch the trailer to our pickup truck and drive out here so we can haul it home." The telegraph operator explains that he'll be glad to help her, then adds, "It will cost 99 cents a word." Well, after paying for the bull, the brunette realizes that she'll only be able to send her sister one word. After a few minutes of thinking, she nods and says, "I want you to send her the word comfortable." The operator shakes his head. "How is she ever going to know that you want her to hitch the trailer to your pickup truck and drive out here to haul that bull back to your ranch if you send her just the word comfortable?" The brunette explains, "My sister's blonde. She'll read it very slowly. Comfortable." As a butcher is shooing away a dog from his shop, he sees a $25 bill and a note in his mouth reading, "10 pork chops, please." Amazed, he takes the money, puts a bag of pork chops in the dog's mouth, and quickly closes the shop. He follows the dog and watches him wait for a green light, look both ways, and trot across the road to a bus stop. The dog checks the timetable and sits on the bench. When a bus arrives, he walks around to the front and looks at the number, then boards the bus. The butcher follows, dumbstruck. As the bus travels out into the suburbs, the dog takes in the scenery. After a while, he stands on his back paws to push the stop bell. Then the butcher follows him off. The dog runs up to a house and drops his bag on the step. He goes back down the path, takes a big run, and throws himself, whap, against the door. He does this again and again, no answer. So he jumps on a wall, walks around the garden, beats his head against a window, jumps off, and waits at the front door. A big guy opens it and starts cursing and shouting at the dog. The butcher runs up and screams at the guy, "What in hell are you doing? This dog's a genius!" The owner responds, "Genius. It's the second time this week he's forgotten his keys." An elderly man married to a much younger woman was feeling exhausted. On his wedding night, he decided to go to sleep without making any moves. His new bride, frustrated and confused, turned to him in the middle of the night. The bride said, "Dear, there's a hole between my legs. Can you do something about it? Maybe we need to do a bit more exploring instead of just sleeping." The old man, barely awake and still half asleep, replied, "That's why I was wondering where this cool breeze was coming from. At my age, exploration is more about finding my way to a good night's sleep." A lost dog wanders through the jungle. In the distance, a lion sees him and whispers, "I'm going to eat him. I have never seen anything like that before." The lion then began to approach the dog in a threatening manner. When the dog realized this, he panicked, but as he tried to run away, he saw a bone nearby, and he got the idea to speak out loud. "Lion meat is delicious." The lion suddenly stopped and said, "Wow, this guy is stronger than he looks. I better go while I can." A monkey was watching this from the tree. Apparently, the monkey thought that if he told the lion, he would get something in return. Then the monkey told the lion the truth, and the lion got angry and said, "Get on my back, and I'll take you with me." And he began to run after the dog. When the dog saw this, he realized what had happened and began to panic even more. Then he had another idea, and he yelled, "Where the hell is that monkey? I told him to bring another lion an hour ago." A man goes into a bar with his dog. He goes up to the bar and asks for a drink. The bartender says, "You can't bring that dog in here." The guy, without missing a beat, says, "This is my seeing eye dog." "Oh, man," the bartender says, "I'm sorry here. The first one's on me." The man takes his drink and goes to a table near the door. Another guy walks into the bar with a Chihuahua. The first guy sees him, stops him, and says, "You can't bring that dog in here unless you tell him it's a seeing eye dog." The second man graciously thanks the first man and continues to the bar. He asks for a drink. The bartender says, "Hey, you can't bring that dog in here." The second man replies, "This is my seeing eye dog." The bartender says, "No, I don't think so. They do not have Chihuahuas as seeing eye dogs." The man pauses for a half second and replies, "What? They gave me a Chihuahua." A mother-in-law was staring at her newborn grandson with a puzzled expression. Unable to hold back her thoughts, she finally said, "Why doesn't my grandson look anything like my son, John?" The daughter-in-law, clearly fed up, stood up, lifted her skirt slightly, and pointed at herself. With a sarcastic tone, she replied, "This isn't a photocopy machine." A retired man purchased a home near a high school. He spent the first few weeks of his retirement in peace. Then the new school year began. One afternoon, early into the first semester, 3 loud young boys came down his street, beating merrily on every bin they came across. They then did so the following day and the day after that, until finally the retiree decided it was time to take some action. The next afternoon, he walked out to meet the boys as they banged their way down the street. Stopping them, he said, "You kids are a lot of fun. I used to do the same thing when I was your age. Will you do me a favor? I'll give you each $1 if you'll promise to come around every day and do your thing." The boys were more than happy and continued to bang the bins every day on their walk home. After a week, the old man walked out and greeted the kids again. However, this time he didn't have a smile on his face. "This recession's really putting a big dent in my income," he told them. "I'm going to have to cut it down to 50 a day to keep you kids banging the bins." The kids were obviously unimpressed, but they accepted the reduction in payment and continued their afternoon activities. A few days later, the man approached them again. "Look," he said, "I haven't received my retirement checks yet, so I'm not going to be able to give you more than 25 CWO to bang on the bins. Will that be okay?" "That's it," the drum leader exclaimed. "If you think we're going to waste our time beating these around for 25 seals a day, you're nuts. No way, mister, we quit." And the man enjoyed peace and serenity for the rest of his days. A boy named Carol had a particularly rough childhood because of his uncommon name. He always got a lot of teasing and abuse at school. Eventually, he overcame his hang-up and married his high school sweetheart. When their first child was born, he let his wife name her. She named the baby girl Love, inspired by the same spirit as Carol's unique name. Unfortunately, Love grew up and endured much of the same teasing that Carol did because of her strange name. She came home from school one day and screamed at her dad, asking why he gave her such a stupid name. Carol took the blame to protect his wife and apologized. In a fit of rage, Love shot him with her dart gun and ran away. Minutes later, Carol's wife came home and saw him lying on the ground. "What happened?" she asked, running to him. He waved her closer and whispered, "Shot through the heart, and you're to blame, darling. You gave Love a bad name." The nun teaching Sunday school was speaking to her class one morning, and she asked the question, "When you die and go to heaven, which part of your body goes first?" Susie raised her hand and said, "I think it's your hands." "Why do you think it's your hands, Susie?" Susie replied, "Because when you pray, you hold your hands together in front of you, and God just takes your hands first." "What a wonderful answer," the nun said. Little Johnny raised his hand and said, "Sister, I think it's your feet." The nun looked at him with the strangest look on her face. "Now, Johnny, why do you think it would be your feet?" Little Johnny said, "Well, I walked into Mommy and Daddy's bedroom the other night. Mommy had her legs straight up in the air, and she was saying, 'Oh, God, I'm coming.' I have to tell you, if Dad hadn't pinned her down, we'd have lost her." A newlywed farmer and his wife were visited by her mother, who immediately demanded an inspection of the place. While they were walking through the barn, the farmer's mule suddenly reared up and kicked the mother-in-law, unfortunately killing her instantly. At the funeral service, the farmer stood near the casket and greeted folks as they walked by. The pastor noticed that whenever a woman would whisper something to the farmer, he would nod his head, yes, and say something. Whenever a man walked by and whispered to the farmer, he would shake his head no and mumble a reply. Curious, the pastor later asked the farmer what that was all about. The farmer replied, The women would say, "What a terrible tragedy." And I would nod my head and say, "Yes, it was." The men would ask, "You want to sell that mule?" And I would shake my head and say, "Can't. It's all booked up for a year." A man has his mother-in-law move in with him when she lost her job. About a week later, he returns home from his job and finds her laying on the floor, unconscious. He calls 911. The ambulance comes and takes her off to the hospital. He calls his wife and tells her she may have to cut her business trip short, but he'll keep her posted. He gets to the hospital and waits outside the surgery, nervous and pacing. Soon the doctor comes out and says he has some good news and some bad news. "Give me the bad news first, Doc." "Well, your mother-in-law had a massive stroke. She's lost her ability to speak and can only cackle like a chicken." The man nods his head. "She's also lost all motor control to her arms and legs, so not only won't she be able to walk, she won't even be able to feed herself. You'll have to feed her baby food for the rest of her life. Every day, 3 times a day." Somberly, the man nods. So the doctor continues. "Without any motor control, she'll also be incontinent, so she'll have to wear diapers for the rest of her life. You'll have to clean her and put a new diaper on her several times a day for the rest of her life." The man nods, processing all this information in his brain, then looks to the doctor and asks, "That's some pretty bad news, but you said you had some good news. What's the good news?" "The good news is I'm just joking with you. She died."